Can everybody hear me? Excellent. Okay. I'm used to holding it closer, so I'm trying to not eat the microphone today. But I want to welcome you to the first Lunch and Learn of the season. My name is Candace Summers. I'm the Senior Director of Education here at the McLean County Museum of History. And I first want to thank our Lunch and Learn sponsors, which is MCK Accountants and Financial Advisors. They are sponsoring the whole year of our Lunch and Learns today, so we're grateful for that community support. And I also want to thank WGLT, Bloomington-Normal's public media radio station, who is our live stream sponsor. So we're thrilled to be able to live stream this presentation to those of us who weren't able to join us in person. Enough out of me. But as a reminder, just remember this is being live streamed, so anything you say in this room could be heard by folks at home. So I always tell people to mind your P's and Q's, because you don't want it to live forever on the internet. But I'm so excited to welcome our speaker today, John Yates, who is the founder of Arcadia, America's Playable Arcade Museum. Who's been to Arcadia before? Yes. Excellent. Well worth the drive if you've not gone. And I'm telling you, kids of all ages, not just the grandkids here. I mean, you can find me there frequently playing Dr. Mario, which is my favorite game to play there. But he is going to tell us where his love and passion for arcade games came from, how Arcadia came to be, and then his plans for the future expansion, which is super excited. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to John Yates.
All right. Oh, gosh. It is amplifying me. Okay. So I spent about 10 minutes planning what I was going to do here. I got my little outline. So I'm going to just blab a lot, but I want you guys, if there's ever a moment where you have a question or you don't get something, please interrupt me, raise a hand or something. Otherwise, I'll just keep on like a freight train. So I guess for those of you who haven't been to Arcadia, I'll just tell you who I am and why I'm here. I operate an arcade down in McLean, Illinois. It's grown to 3 different buildings, and now we're working on our 4th building, and there's no end in sight. But the question is, how on earth did I end up doing this? And it's an odd story, but it would have to be, because there aren't very many people doing this kind of thing. So let me show you just real quick some pictures of what I've got right now. And these, I spent 8 hours over the last 2 days trying to find all the old pictures that I have of my buildings, and I couldn't find them anywhere on any flash drives, any old computers. So these are just a hodgepodge of pictures I happen to have. This is the main arcade, Arcadia, at night with all the neon lit. And here it is kind of from the street. This is just a picture I had while we were doing some of the renovations on the building. This building, when I bought it, was a complete shambles. The roof was leaking, the windows were broken in and boarded up, and it was a disaster. So we've completely renovated the thing from bottom. Yeah.
When did you buy it?
I bought it in around 98. I moved to McLean I got out of college in 92. I went to U of I in electrical and computer engineering in Champaign, and then my wife and I got married right away out of college, lived with my parents for a couple years, and then moved to McLean in 94. And I just started buying all the buildings in McLean because, as you may know, in central Illinois or all throughout downstate Illinois, you find a little farm town like this, and the downtown is usually just in shambles, and no one's keeping up the buildings. So I started scooping up all the buildings just because I needed room to store all my arcade games. So I bought this one in 98. I just used it as a warehouse until about 08, and that's when, or no, 03, and that's when we started renovating. And we're still working on the renovations. The the last sixth of the building is now in the process of being renovated. Oops, and I clicked on the wrong thing. What is that? Okay, and this is the building that has for the last 30 years been my warehouse. It was the old grocery store in McLean when we moved there. Hamlin's Market, I think it was. No, that was the one in Atlanta. This was called Reese's Market. And as soon as I moved to town, that guy was like, please buy my building. Because he wanted to go, he was losing money every year and he just needed a way out. So I bought it, and that's kind of, I ripped the front off of it. It had a completely different, hideous front, and I ripped it off, and that was what was underneath. So we left it that way for the last 30 years, but now we're redoing that building. This is just another building in McLean I happened to buy that we use. It's got a couple of Airbnbs in it and some warehouses behind. And then this is the only picture I had of my main shop building. This, the one on the left there, that's the one that I first bought when my wife and I needed a place to live and I needed a place for my shop, and I drove through McLean for the first time, never been there, just because I like driving through old towns in Illinois, and I saw that building for sale, and the guy that was selling it was working on it, so I just got out and bought it on the spot, worked out a deal. It was great. So it's the way God works. I mean, these things just, I mean, everything I've done really has, up until now, has not been super planned. It's like God just opens these doors, and it's like, oh, okay, why not? If I could have planned this out from the beginning, I would have never ended up where I am right now. And I've tried to escape many times, but I just kind of got stuck. This is another building in the downtown that it was the old bank building, then it was the post office, and then it was a tanning salon, and then it was just a boarded up wreck that was about to collapse. So we bought that and renovated it, and now that is it's an arcade called Pinball Paradise, all full of just pinball machines. Just some other views of that building. So, and there's a few other buildings, but I don't have pictures of them, so I guess they don't exist if there's no pictures. And then I guess I'll also show you the collection. This is kind of how I got stuck in this business, because in high school, well, I guess maybe I'll go back and explain. I'll show you some of these pictures, and then I'll explain the history of how I got here. So this is just some of my game collection stuffed into buildings and warehouses all over central Illinois. And these are all vintage games from 1960 through 1990, roughly. And you've probably seen a third of them or half of them. I mean, there's a lot. I've got 1,700 games, so it's crazy. Okay, so how did I get here? Well, I guess if I trace it back, it was when we moved to Bloomington-Normal, my dad worked for the Illinois Farm Bureau, and he started in around 76, and we moved to this town, and we started going to Grace Baptist Church. And that church had a guy at the church named Bob Fay who owned, I don't know if any of you remember, if you've been around this long, the hole-in-one donut shops. Does anybody remember that? Okay. And he also had arcade games. Well, back then it was just old pinball machines because there were no video games back then. So he had this chain of donut shops with arcade games or pinball machines, and he also had donated some to the church. And so every 3 or 4 times a week when I was at church, I was playing these games as a little kid. And he had a Pong, the first game, one of the first games ever. And I was just mesmerized as like what was I, 8, 9? I was born in 68, so 8, 9, 10 years old, and I loved playing these games. And then I also became best friends with Bob Fay's son, Terry, who was my age, and so I was at his house. They, of course, had several pinball machines in their basement, and secretly, the only reason I really liked Terry was because he had pinball machines. I mean, and I did as many sleepovers there as I could because I just loved playing these pinball machines. And I also kind of got a feel for how the amusement industry worked just from interacting with his dad, and because most people don't understand how do games show up in different places and who owns these and who takes care of them and where's the money go. And I kind of got a feel for that, and I think it planted a seed in my head. And so I grew up in the absolute perfect era for someone who would want to be into arcade games. I mean, it was right when the boom happened in around 78, 79, 80, where it was the biggest industry. The amusement industry was the biggest industry in the nation. It was bigger than the movie industry. It was like an $8 billion a year thing. And so, you know, everybody my age hung out at the arcade. We didn't have phones, of course. Our social network was you get out of school, you go to the arcade, and you hang out at the arcade for 3 or 4 hours with your friends. You maybe don't play games. I never played games because I didn't have any money. My parents wouldn't give me any money to play games. But I just kind of lived at the arcade, and I watched people play games, and we talked about games, and every time a new game would come out, it was like it was like a new movie coming out. We were so excited, couldn't wait to see it and play it and see how it worked. And so that, I think it just really planted this passion in me. And then the fact that my parents wouldn't really help me play them at all kind of built this tension where I really want to play these things, but I just can't. So, but still, it was never anything I thought, well, someday I'm going to grow up and I'm going to own all these. I never crossed my mind. But in high school, the local arcade did put for sale signs on the arcade games at the end of the year, and they'd sold off the old ones. So I bought one when I was in high school. It was called Star Trek, and put it in my parents' library. Looked hilarious in this old antique library, and then there's this new Star Trek game sitting here. But so that was my first foray into buying games, and then went off to U of I, and I've always been an entrepreneur. Since I was in 3rd grade, I was selling paper airplanes. In like 5th and 6th grade, I was buying and selling lawnmowers. It's in my blood to buy and sell stuff. So I got to college freshman year. Within a month, I had purchased 2 pop machines from local sororities who wanted to get rid of them and put them in dorm rooms, and I was selling, like doing vending out of, boy, how much time do we have? Because at the rate I'm going, this is going to take till about 5 o'clock. But that's where I learned this exciting idea of operating something that makes money when you're not there. You know, the whole Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad, Poor Dad, a business is something that makes money without you having to be there. That's a true business. And I thought, this is great. So I started buying more pop machines, and I actually had a route of pop machines. Well, this is all while I'm a freshman at U of I. I'm operating this route of pop machines in apartment complexes and other people's dorm rooms. Not so much the arcade thing, though, just the vending. So then my junior year, I moved into an apartment building with some friends, and I didn't have any room for all the pop machines I was buying. I had like 20 pop machines, and only about 8 of them were out. The other 12 were like in my apartment or in the courtyard of the apartment. Almost got evicted when the landlord saw that. But so I found there was a garage, like an abandoned garage behind my apartment building in Urbana that was all boarded up, and I researched through the plat maps and whatnot who owns this property. I called the owner and I said, hey, I need somewhere to store pop machines. Can I rent that garage from you? And he said, sure, but you're gonna have to clean it out. It's full of junk. I said, okay. So we pulled the boards off of it, cut the lock, opened the garage door, and it was full of arcade games. And so that was the moment that if I could go back in time, I would probably not call that guy. And just, because I mean, I don't know, my life would be so different, because then I got so into arcade games because there were about 22 games, I think, in that garage. Brought them all into the apartment one at a time and fixed them. They were all broken, but fixed them and cleaned them up and sold them. Or, you know, started buying and selling games, and then it was all over, because then I was buying arcade games every time I got a chance, filling up mini warehouses with them. I was renting my roommates. I had 2 roommates, and I paid each of them an extra $50 a month so that I could put like 6 arcade games in each of their bedrooms. And they had to just like open the door and just jump into bed. There was nowhere to go around it, but I needed the space. So, yeah, I mean, that was crazy. So I graduate from U of I in electrical engineering, and interviewed with 5 or 6 companies and got some plant trips and all that, but nobody would hire me, and it's because I did not learn a darn thing. I literally learned nothing at U of I. I graduated with a good GPA, but that's only because I'm a good test taker. I was not paying attention in class. I was out running businesses. I was also, during this time, I was a partner in an antique store in downtown Champaign. So I was working that store a lot and buying and selling stuff. I was driving all over the state looking for antiques. I was also a partner with a guy that worked at Hobbyco that had his own pinball retail business over in way out in East Urbana. All this going on while I'm supposed to be at school and running the vending business. So I was in class a quarter of the time, and when I was there, I was playing the Game Boy. I wasn't listening. So anyway, I couldn't get a job, so I thought, all right, I'm just going to try and go into the amusement business. So I went around, wrote like a 12-page business plan. I went around to all the banks in Central Illinois, and they all thought I was crazy. They're not loaning money for this kind of a business. There's no assets. There's no guaranteed income. But I found one guy named Don Sagasser. He was a real old guy about to retire at First Federal Savings and Loan in Champaign. And he was like an old school banker, the kind you see in the movies where he just, after I'd made my presentation, he said, you know, I should never give you a penny. No one else would give you a penny, but I can just tell by the look in your eyes that you're an honest guy and I can trust you. So I'm going to give you the loan. And he did, signed the papers, and he gave me what I needed. And that guy, another one, maybe I wish I hadn't called him, but but he got me started, and I ran an amusement route. That's where you go out and you talk to pizza shop places and convenience stores, and you try to talk them into letting you put a game in their business. And then you split 50-50, whatever the game makes. You do all the maintenance and licensing and all that. So it's a no-brainer for the business owner. Doesn't cost them anything, and it's using space that wasn't making them money before. So I built up this arcade route of about 150, 200 games spread out around Central Illinois. But this is, after about 2 years, I realized I'm never going to make it in this business because I'm not a drinker. I've never had a drink in my life. I don't even feel comfortable walking into bars, and that's the only way you make money in this business is in bars. Pizza place, arcade games do not make money anymore. A convenience store, none of that. The only thing that makes money is having machines in bars, and it's gambling machines, really. I didn't want to be involved in the gambling end either. I just liked the games. So I realized this isn't going to work, and I won't bore, I don't have time to bore you with the details, but God directed me to this person, friend of my parents, who I talked to, and she's like, oh yeah, we'll get you a job fixing copiers at our place. And I went in and interviewed. I got a job in Bloomington at a place called Progressive Impressions. Let me take a drink, I'm getting dry. And let me just look at the time here. I should put this out so I know. Okay. And so I worked, they hired me to fix copiers, but it was like 6 months before the copier training started. So they said, okay, well, for the next 6 months while you're waiting, just sit down there with the IT department and just see what they're doing and see if you can find something to do. Well, I had grown up with computers. I mean, when I was in junior high, the first Radio Shack TRS-80 Model 1 came out, and our library got one, and I was in that library every day at lunch alone working on this Radio Shack TRS-80. And then my parents, God bless my parents, they were so good to me. When the Apple II came out, we had Apple Tree computers down in downtown Normal, if any of you remember that. And they bought me an Apple II Plus computer, and I learned to program at home. And I never thought of programming as a career or anything. It was fun, and I definitely had a mind for it. So in high school, one of my businesses was writing software for Normal Community High School, like for their physics department and their chemistry department. They had different lab experiments, and I wrote software where they could enter in the results, the students could enter in results of their experiments, and it would draw graphs and print them out and stuff. So I knew how to program, but I just didn't think anything of it. And so at Progressive Impressions, they put me down there in the IT department, and I just took to it like a duck to water. And within about a year, I was like leading that department and had 22 programmers under me, and I was like, oh, I am a good programmer. Okay, I didn't know. So I did that for about 5.5 years. Then my best friend moved out to California for the startup boom in the late 90s, and I helped him move out there. And while I was helping him move, I interviewed with his boss, and his boss offered me 2.5 times what I was making in Bloomington, just on the spot. So I was like, okay, that's it, I'm done. So moved out to California for that gold rush, then moved, I'm gonna skip a bunch of stuff. I moved back for another startup. I was involved in startups for about 7 or 8 years. I did my own startup where I moved back to California for a couple years, and that failed miserably. I do have one picture I can show of this for what it's worth, since pictures paint 1,000 words. I think it's in here. Boxaroo, yeah. Just happened to stumble on it this morning. This is my business partner and best friend, Matt Walsh, and a couple of our investors while we were during the Boxaroo days. So I raised about $1 million locally just from angel investors, moved out to California, and we tried to build a startup that was gonna kind of interface with eBay. And it worked, and our system worked, but the business model didn't really work. Almost got bought by eBay. I had my Ferrari picked out, literally. I mean, it was there, they had my name on it, and because we were in meetings with eBay to get bought. We went through about 8 meetings. They were about to make us an offer, and then in '08, the stock market crashed. CEO said, we're done with acquisitions, we're not buying anybody else. We were out of our venture capital, so I moved back to Illinois, which was a good thing because my dad had been mercifully trying to nurse my businesses back here and keep them alive. And he was getting exhausted from it. I still had, 7 or 8 buildings back here full of arcade games. I had just abandoned them, left them, and moved out to California. So I came back from that. This is now finally getting us to how I got to Arcadia. So I've now been a part of 3 failed startups. The last one, I was the CEO, and it was a complete failure. Lost everybody's money. And so I come back from that and don't know what to do. So I decided, well, actually, my wife and I are Christians, and I've always felt convicted that I'm wasting my life, that I'm not really serving God. Here I am just serving money, trying to get rich. So I thought, I need to prepare myself for becoming a missionary. And I thought the best thing I can do is teach myself some skills that are actually useful out in the world as opposed to just programming and working on arcade games. So I decided to remodel one of my buildings and teach myself carpentry and plumbing and electrical and HVAC and drywall and painting, all the stuff you need to do. So I actually redid Arcadia. For me, when I walk in there, it's really special because I did everything in there by myself. I mean, I built the walls. I plumbed the bathrooms. Don't tell any of the inspectors. I did all the wiring. I did the HVAC. I installed the furnace and hung the pipe. I did hire somebody to do the drywall. I just thought, I don't need to learn that. That's okay. But everything else in there, I sanded the floors and polyurethaned them. I tiled the bathrooms, never done tile before, but they've got ornate tile in the bathrooms. I just thought, I want to learn all this stuff. And I can't believe that place has been open 15 years and the pipes, the plumbing has always worked, never leaked, because that's just a miracle. I mean, I was doing it with copper and sweating it and everything, and somehow I did it right. But so I got the building done, and actually at this point, I still didn't have the idea of making that an arcade, believe it or not. I still was thinking, well, I'm just renovating this building because it's run down and it needs renovation, and I want to learn these skills, and I'll just put a for rent sign in it when I'm done, and we'll get a coffee shop in here or something. So as I'm getting it just finished up, I put a for rent sign in the window for a while, but I thought, first I thought, I'll put a coffee shop in myself, but I decided, what the heck, I've got all these games. I'm just gonna put some games in here, and I'll still keep the for sale sign or for rent sign in, but we'll just have some games in here, that way it'll make some money. So I filled it up with video games, no pinballs, and I did a handwritten sign, Arcade Museum, and stuck it in the window. And I just opened it up. My thinking was, well, it's not going to make any money. I can't afford to hire anybody to work here. I'm just going to open it in the morning, close it at night, and pray about it and hope for the best. And I did that, and it was funny because when I first opened it, I really thought, for me, the grand opening was like this huge event, like the biggest thing in my life. And I thought that as soon as I put that sign in the window, unlock the door, and step back, there's going to be this flood of people in. And it's so not that way. I put that sign up in the window, unlocked the door, nobody came in. Nobody knew it was there. Even the town people, they had gotten so used to walking past and ignoring it, they didn't even know there was anything different. I tried putting a sign out like at the exit, just a handwritten sign, Arcade Museum with an arrow, and nobody came in. So I sobered up real quick on that idea. But I did just keep opening it and closing it, and I just thought, well, it's not costing me anything. I own the building, I own the games, I don't have any labor in here, I'm just gonna keep opening it and closing it. And so I did that for several years, and it never even made enough to pay the utilities. But then I hate to credit Facebook because it's really God that orchestrates everything and that ordains that things succeed or fail. But God used Facebook, let's just say, because I put this thing on Facebook, just somebody after like 3 or 4 years said, hey, you should have a Facebook page. And I was like, oh, okay. Put it on Facebook, and then people were able to start sharing it, people that had found this hidden secret. Because anyone that came there was blown away, and they were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is here. You need to advertise this. But advertising is so expensive. Billboards are like $1,000 a month. It's insane. And radio advertising, they wanted like $1,500 a month for radio. This arcade doesn't make that kind of money. So Facebook, though, you tell your friends, hey, I found this great arcade, and then they tell their friends, and so it's like a business made for Facebook because there is no other arcade. If it was a hair salon, it probably doesn't matter because there's a hair salon on every corner. But an arcade, when people see it on Facebook, they're like, oh, I haven't seen one of those in 20 years. We got to check this thing out. So all of a sudden, it started getting busy, and I was still just opening it and closing it at night and no employees. Which is good because it still wasn't making enough to pay an employee. But at least people were coming and the word was spreading. And I finally, after about, I opened it this is 2009 when I opened the doors. Probably by about 2018, 2019, 17, 18, 19, sometime in there is one. Before that, by the way I was paying my bills, because when I came back from the startup, I didn't have a job. But I was buying and selling arcade games. That's how I kept if you're wondering, how on earth did I keep food on the table? Because it was expensive. My expenses were through the roof. I owned like 9 buildings, all commercial loans. My credit cards I'd had up as high as $150,000 financing this business. My expenses were astronomical just to pay minimum payments on all the loans. But I just trusted and knew, hey, I'm building an asset. All these games that I'm buying, as I'm hoarding these games, I know they're worth more than I'm paying. Someday it's going to pay off. I knew it. And my wife, praise God, she trusted me. Most women want security and would just absolutely divorce me after learning who I was. But I made a deal with her when we first got married. I said, listen, please just trust me with the finances. It is going to look, if you look at it, it's going to look terrifying. But don't look at it and just trust me until it goes wrong. Give me one free get out of jail card, And just trust me, it's going to work out. Don't look at behind this curtain to see what's going on. Because, maxing out these credit cards and we were in debt like $600,000-700,000 at our peak, with all these building loans and stuff, but I just knew we're gonna turn the corner once we start getting these loans paid off, and it's gonna work. And somehow, through God's grace, there was always enough money coming in each month to cover these bills. And it also helped me, I hope you guys don't mind me talking about my spiritual life, because it helped me to really build trust in God, because every month it was, are we going to make it this month? And you know, if you've got a job with a set paycheck and a set number of expenses, I think a person could sink into trusting, well, yeah, I'm okay, I don't really need to trust God. I was on my knees every morning, because I knew that I can't control this. I needed to sell like $15,000 worth of games every month to cover my expenses, and that's a lot to sell. So I was putting in a lot of hours. But anyway, the deal has still so far worked, where my wife has not had to punish me or divorce me or whatever. She's stuck with it, because we made it. We started finally in around 2022, 2023, just a couple of years ago. The first building finally got paid off, and then we were able to apply the payments to all the other buildings, and we were able to get all the buildings paid off. So in the last 2 years, everything has turned around, because now we're virtually debt-free, and we still have the same income. Well, I stopped selling games for the most part, but no, we just won't. It's too long a story. But bottom line is, the expenses have gone from here to here, and the income has kind of stayed the same or grown, because the arcade has gotten more and more notoriety, and I've expanded it. So that's why Arcadia Unlimited, finally, that's the fourth expansion that I think prompted Candace to contact me, because I was in the news about this Arcadia Unlimited. So now, for the first time, this business isn't just well, we'll just keep opening it and see what happens, but we'll focus on other stuff. Now it's like, okay, this is our future. We can make something out of this now. And it's really exciting, I gotta say, after 35 years of working my tail off 60 hours a week and just barely scraping by every month, to now be in a position where it's like, okay, we can actually think about the future and have some dreams and think, what would we like to do with this business? It's thrilling. And so the first thing we thought of, I had this warehouse building, that Reese's Market that I bought. It was in horrible shape, and I always told people, they said, hey, are you ever gonna remodel the grocery store? I said, oh no, that building's too far gone. The roof was so bad, I would spend several days a year worth of time just emptying buckets from all the water that leaked. I mean, it was terrible. But we did decide, okay, we're gonna restore that building, because if you've been to downtown McLean, there aren't very many buildings, so you gotta work with what's there. So that's what Arcadia Unlimited is. We're gonna completely renovate that grocery store building and turn it into a really massive arcade that dwarfs what we already have. And to give you, let's see. I guess I kind of skipped over the expansions, but over the years I did expand into the Pinball Paradise, and I doubled the size of Arcadia into the building it was in. But, okay, yeah. So let me give you the idea behind Arcadia Unlimited. There's a lot of different philosophies between how to run a big arcade these days. By the way, you probably know if you follow the news, there's arcades popping up all over the country. It's kind of gotten to be this retro cool thing. And I even had one of my side businesses a few years ago was called Barcade in a Box, because I had so many games that I didn't need, more than I needed. So I started this business where I would sell someone a Barcade in a Box. Barcade is, by the way, that's one of the most popular types of arcade that opens these days. It's where somebody that already has a tavern or wants to have a tavern, they say, hey, let's put arcade games in it, and that'll attract people in, and then they'll buy our alcohol, because that's where they make their money. So there are barcades opening all over the country. To this day, they're still open. There's probably one opening every week somewhere. We had one here in Bloomington that is called 8-Bit, and I have no idea why they went under. That must have been something, they didn't manage it right or something. But they're usually successful anywhere they go. So I thought, well, I'll just sell someone everything they need to start a barcade in one package. And I sold a few of those. It was a successful business, but I started to run out of the duplicates. I've got, with 1,700 games, I have a lot of duplicates, so I was selling off all the duplicates, but then I got down to where I don't really want to sell any game that I've only got one of. So I decided, okay, I got to stop this barcade in a box thing. So anyway, barcades is one philosophy that's very successful. Well, I'm not going to do that. I don't drink, and I don't want to encourage drinking, and I don't want to be in a place where people are drinking. So that's out. The other, if it's not a barcade that's opening, everyone is opening what they call free play arcades, where you go in and you pay $10, $15, $20 at the door, you get a wristband, and then everything's on free play, and you just stay all day and play whatever games you want. I purposely did not go with that model, even though it's by far the most lucrative model, because it's not about money for me. It was about recreating the experience that I had as a kid going into an arcade. And that experience is you walk in and you might only have $1, and you put it in the changer, you hear the ching of the quarters coming out, and then you drop the quarter in to play, because I'm telling you, there's a massive difference psychologically when you put a quarter in a game and play it than when you just walk up to it's on free play and you hit start. And you play it completely differently, and you enjoy it a lot differently because you've got an investment in it, and so you really try and you care and you want to get better. Whereas if it's on free play, you just keep, I'll keep playing. So I didn't want to go that route. Well, I get a lot of people that come in and say, why don't you just have them on free play and let us pay $10 at the door? And I try to explain to them why I don't do it that way. But I decided, okay, well, this is perfect for Arcadia Unlimited. I'm going to have an unlimited play arcade in the same town right next to a regular arcade. So now I've got the best of both worlds. If you want to stay all day and play with your kids, go to Arcadia Unlimited and you can play all day. But if you're on a date and you only want to spend $5, then go into traditional Arcadia, put $5 in and leave when you run out of quarters. So I'm thinking that this will be a success. I don't think it'll hurt original Arcadia because I think there's enough purists like me that'll still come in and want to drop coins in those. And it's going to be different games too. I had to really compromise on what I consider great games and bad games because I have to give the people what they want. So Arcadia has slowly transformed from an arcade full of really great games that I think are the best games ever made to a bunch of junk that kids want to play. I'm sorry to say it. But when I put in the games I like, no one plays them. Like I had my favorite game of all time front and center in Arcadia. It would make like $6 every 6 months. I mean, and then you put this junk game where they're just shooting ghosts and stuff, and it'll make $100 a week, So I'm going to keep all the junk in Arcadia. Don't quote me on that. Oh, shoot, this is on the internet. It's not junk. It's just, you got to understand my generation. It's a generational thing. They're great games for those of you on the internet. And same with pinball. I'm not as much into pinball. I'm a video game guy, but people just want more. Pinball is so hot, so I keep adding more and more pinballs. And I've got like 20 of them in Arcadia and 25 of them in Pinball Paradise now. And I'm going to have a Pinball Paradise Unlimited section of Arcadia Unlimited that's going to be all free play pinball too. Because I have over 200 pinballs in my warehouse. I just need a place to put them. So I'm running out of time here, so let me quickly show you some pictures of where we're at with Arcadia Unlimited. Let's see, yeah. First I'll show you some of the, like here we go, the roof problems. First I had to get the roof fixed because without that the building's worthless. So they got up to check the roof and realized that it was about to cave in. It had been built, yeah, see, that's what it was like, and that was, I'm telling you, that thing was going to fall any day. Because what they had done is they decided, I don't know who the engineers were, but they thought, we don't want to have support posts here, so we'll put up these weird rafter things sticking up out of the roof. Well, as the roof leaked, it rotted out all the wood, and that baby was about to collapse. So Parks Construction, Todd Parks down in Atlanta was a great guy. He ripped out that whole ceiling and put in and completely rebuilt this whole side of the roof. Okay, and then here's the base. I should have told you about my kids. I've got 3 daughters who I love dearly. This is 2 of them who I taught to build walls for me. for Arcadia Unlimited, they actually built a lot of the walls. I thought it would be useful for them to learn how to do framing. So that's us down there building a wall. Oh, and by the way, this is a 4-phase project, Arcadia Unlimited. We're starting with just the basement because that needed the least work. And it's a huge 5,000 square foot basement. So, oh, and here's a picture I found in some historical documents. This is what Arcadia Unlimited building looked like in the 50s. Nothing like it looks now, but that's what it looks like now. But here's some of what I'm doing. I do all kinds of weird things. Since I'm doing the construction, I built this, I thought, hey, I got this blank wall, why don't I do something interesting with it? I'm calling it Founder's Wall, and I put in these 5 panes that are gonna have shelves, and they're gonna light up, and I'm gonna put all the toys I used to play with when I was a kid on these shelves, just because I thought, well, I grew up going to House on the Rock, have any of you been to House on the Rock? Yeah, and people like looking at interesting stuff, so I thought, yeah, if I'm building a wall, I might as well do something interesting with it. And I do the same thing where I take video game sides from games I've burned and I build them into the wall. There's going to be a big marquee wall here that shows video game signs lit up. So here's how I take video game sides and build them into the walls. And I do fun stuff like the wood behind those video games, I didn't buy that wood. I actually took the old support posts that used to support the beams and some of the old beams that were kind of rotten, and I took them to a woodworking place, and they ripped them down into strips, and so I reused all lumber. I didn't really have to buy any lumber to do this project. I just reused what was there. And I had to do some foundation repair because the front porch was about to fall in. That was very costly. And I also, $30,000 just to waterproof it. This basement had flooded like 4 or 5 times since I owned it. I mean, really flooded. And so I knew that had to be dealt with. So we got that completely waterproofed. And I think I'm out of time, even though I've got a lot more to say and a lot more pictures I could show. But, oops, and I just went out.
Go to the shared with me on the side.
Oh, yeah.
There we go.
Oops, I went back too far. I don't think I showed you, let me just show you real quick the pictures inside Arcadia. I meant to show those. Yeah. Here I just blabbed. You probably would have rather seen pictures. Okay, yeah, this is what I mean by a marquee wall. I've got all these thousands of extra game signs from the tops of games, and I put LED lights behind them and frame them into the wall so that you can just enjoy the artwork. The games themselves provide so much artwork that when I redo a building, I don't put stuff on the wall. I mean, I let the games be the art, you know. This is part of Arcadia. Those are some of those new non-junk games that I was talking about. And I do have some really unique, cool stuff like this time traveler here. That was a hologram game that Sega came out with in 1991. It uses a Laserdisc player and this parabolic mirror to reflect up, and it creates this holographic image on top of the platform where you actually see people walking around, and you can move them around, manipulate them. And I didn't even talk about my arcade collection, but obviously I've been collecting since '91, and I have got probably the biggest collection of arcade games anywhere. Probably, there might be somebody out there I don't know about. And the rarest, I mean, I've got one-of-a-kind pieces, prototypes. But see, I don't put that stuff in Arcadia because who's going to walk up to usually a prototype is a prototype for a reason. It stinks. So no point putting it out there. But, and Arcadia Unlimited is going to give me the opportunity to operate what I consider really good classic games, the stuff that people from our generation grew up playing. If I put them in here, nobody plays them because my main demographic is middle-aged State Farm execs that are bringing their kids out to play, That's my main demographic. And it's not like hardcore gamers, single guys going in there wanting to hang out all night. No, I get a few of those, and those guys I don't make any money on because they're so good at games, they $1 and they can play for 4 hours. So it's the families with the little 6-year-old that's just like, Mommy, look, when I put the quarter in, it makes this noise. I've watched kids just sitting, just that handful of quarters, ding, oh, I like that sound, you know? And I just sit back and I'm like, hey, thank you, God. So I guess that's it. Does anybody have any questions or anything?
And oh, wait. Microphone. So our friends at home can hear you.
Where do you buy the games?
Good question. Before the internet is when I acquired, believe it or not, a lot of my games I bought before 95. Like between 92 and 95, I was just insane about driving around the country buying games. And the way I found them back then was I had these phone discs. You remember phone discs, a CD that had phone numbers on it for like marketing companies to use. And I would search the amusement industry and I would call operators just all over the Midwest and say, hey, I'm a collector that's going to start up a museum someday. I actually said that. I wasn't really planning to. I just thought that was a good line, you know. But I'm looking for old games. And back then, before the internet, these games were worthless because once it stopped making money in the arcade, it was a wooden box taking up space and they needed to put something else in. And they had no way really to get rid of it. So a lot of the best games I got in the 90s for 25 bucks a piece. Just haul it away, get it out of here, I need the space. Now it's completely changed. Those deals they've been long gone. It's really hard to find games. I occasionally still come across a deal, like I found a guy in Ohio that had retired in the 80s and still had 3 barns full of games, and I bought them all. But the problem is they're just rotten, you know. They've gotten water damage, they've had termites in them. So really now where I get them is people call me because they see me on the news. I literally get people say, hey, I just saw you on PBS. Do you buy pinball machines? I'll say, sure. And they'll sell me, so I buy them one at a time now out of people's basements. I wish I could still go out and get warehouses, but.
Do you get any visitors that are on the Route 66 trail?
Excellent question. I got to be careful because I don't want to say anything that gets me in trouble. Let me just say an observation I've made, because I also have an arcade museum down in Atlanta called the Route 66 Arcade Museum. Long story beyond that I won't bore you with. But I have watched these Route 66 tourists come into that arcade and come into my arcade in Arcadia. And I have learned that people that are Route 66 enthusiasts are not people who are arcade enthusiasts. They come in and they're like, oh, wow, look at this. Oh, look, Bill, would you get a picture of me in front of this? Yay. And I'll go up to them and say, hey, they're all playable. Just go, the change machine's right there. You can put quarters in. Oh, no, we don't want to touch anything. No, you can touch them. It's okay. They were made. No, we don't want to bother. We just want to see. It's okay. And I've seen that like 30 times. So I don't know what it is, but they're not game people. So I like being on Route 66, but I don't know how much it's going to help me, to be honest.
I was just wondering, I'd been to the Atlanta arcade a number of years ago, and I didn't know if you were officially connected to that or not. And then I was down there not too long ago, and they seem to have adopted a different model where now you have to buy an admission ticket
right.
to get into it, and then I think you have to pay per machine.
No, what it is I was kind of trying out the free play arcade idea. It's $5 to get in, and then everything is supposed to be on free play. Nothing is supposed to take quarters. Everything's supposed to be where you hit the start button and it goes. And I did that because I thought all these Route 66 people are just wanting to go in and get their pictures with the games, and I'm not going to make any money. Maybe if I force them to pay to get in to get their picture, then I'll at least get $5 out of them. And that hasn't worked either. Now they just don't go in. So I don't know. I had big plans for that building. Originally, I actually bought that building, and I was going to move a lot of my operation down there. But changed my mind and sold the building. And so yeah, that place has not been a success. My plan, by the way, I've purchased 2 other buildings in Atlanta. The old grocery store in Atlanta I bought, and that has become a new business called Arcadia Auctions, where I do arcade auctions every 3 months. But I don't have time to talk about that. And then I bought the building next to that, and I'm renovating that one, and I'm gonna move my shop down there. So my plan is to make a bigger, better Route 66 Arcade Museum there to target Route 66 people. But that'll be after McLean. So, and why? Oh, just because I've got 1,700 games I gotta find something to do with.
Are you self-taught as far as the maintenance and repair of the games?
Yeah, I pretty much. I mean, I've got the degree in electrical and computer engineering, but I thought that would help me, but it doesn't, because that, for one thing, I didn't go to class, and second of all, they were teaching you how to design microprocessors. These games are all old technology. So yeah, it's all self-taught. It's like, and that's why I'm really good at it, because I've got 35 years. I've owned over 7,000 games. I've sold like 5,000. And I've fixed all those. So every time you see a game with a new problem, you learn how to fix that problem, and then the next time you see it. So I've gotten really good at it. And I've started another business called Arcadia Service, which I didn't bring up before, but I've got a tech that works with me, and he goes out and does the easy jobs, and then the hard stuff I go out and do if I have to. But yeah, it's all self-taught. And nowadays, though, anybody can learn, because YouTube has made it so easy. My goodness. You can type in Atari breakout paddle won't turn, and sure enough, there's some guy with a video out there about how to fix that problem, you know? It's amazing.
So we have a couple of questions and comments from YouTube. One person says, I agree that free play is somehow not as fun. And they also ask, are there any plans to open restaurants in the area to make it a full experience?
Absolutely. I have wanted a restaurant there for so long, but we haven't had enough traffic to really justify bringing in a restaurant. But once I get Arcadia Unlimited open, I mean, we now get lots of traffic Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. But Arcadia Unlimited, I'm hoping, will bring traffic throughout the week. And I'm good friends with several different restaurateurs in town. I don't know if I should tease it, because then people will be asking them, oh, are you really going to McLean? But I'm looking at one guy who wants to have, well, actually, this one guy, I'll say it. Because this is all just out in the ether. It may never happen. But the guy that does Hink's Smokehouse, he's always here at Farmer's Market. Adam, great guy, and we go to church together, and we're good friends. I'm trying to lure him into opening his own restaurant, because his barbecue sauce is so successful. And he's got a food truck now that he takes out, and so he's kind of open to the idea of opening like a weekend-only restaurant, and then when it grows. So yeah, barbecue, and then another type of food. I probably better not say the guy's name, but he's open to it too. So yeah, definitely we need food there, because I get that call all the time. Is there anywhere we can eat? And I say McDonald's, Subway, and Dixie Truck Stop.
All right, one more question from the comments. Probably a junk game, but are you able to get a hold of the Simpsons arcade game?
Oh yeah, I had Simpsons. What am I saying? I've got the Simpsons game in there. Yeah.
That's also another one of my favorite games, by the way.
Yeah, and I've got other Simpsons games. There's a Simpsons pinball, and there's a Simpsons bowling game. I've got all those too. They're going to go into the expansion.
I'm just curious. I don't know, when these games are played, they have to fail after a while. And if you've got 1,700 games, you must spend a lot of time fixing them.
You know, actually, I always tell people the least reliable games out there are the newer games. The newer a game is, the more of a piece of junk it is. Because once you get to about 05, 06, 07, they started putting Windows PCs in games. Any of you who have operated a Windows PC, how would you like to try to resurrect a 2006 Windows PC and make it work? Not easy. The older games were so much better made. The chips were better, they used better solder. The breadboards were better made, where they don't like I mean, they actually have thick traces on them that don't just disintegrate after a few years. So actually, it's not that hard. I've got games in there from the 70s. Like, I got a Sprint 2. The thing is 40, it was 1976, almost 50 years old. The thing still works on original hardware, never had to work on it. So, and also one reason that I don't have to, I spend maybe half a day a month fixing the games in those two places. Now, people who are critical may notice, yes, there are about 5 or 10 games in there broken right now, and those are games that I just don't want to work on. And so I've got games in there that have been broken for 2 years because I just don't want to deal with them. I could fix them in an afternoon, but I just, you know how you get mental blocks sometimes, and you're like, no, I'm not touching that thing. So I've done that with a handful of games. I keep the main ones going. But what I do is when I get a game in there that's a lemon, they're kind of like cars, where you'll get a game that you'll fix, and then it'll break again next week, and you can't figure out why. And then another game, the exact same title, is just perfectly rock solid. I try to just weed out the lemons. And I've had 15 years to do that, and now I've got a crop of games in Arcadia that are really reliable. I also rebuild the monitors and rebuild the power supplies before I put them in there. That means, you know, like replacing all of the components, like the capacitors mainly, which have finite lifespans, and so that buys you another 20 years. So.
All right, those were awesome questions. Thank you to everyone for joining us this afternoon. Thank you, John, very much.
Thank you.
And now everyone goes and plays video games. Get in your cars, go to Arcadia right now.
Actually, we're not open, so don't.
Oh, never mind. Go this weekend. But I do want to thank once again WGLT, Bloomington-Normal's public media radio station, for being our live stream sponsor, and MCK Accountants and Financial Advisors. Please come back next month for our Lunch and Learn with Jay Pratt, who is the superintendent of Miller Park Zoo, and he's going to tell us what's new at the zoo on October 10th, right back here or online. Thank you once again, and if you haven't gotten your cemetery walk tickets, you better get them fast because they're flying out the door.
All right, thanks. Well, thank you.